we're in Esther chapter 4, verses 4 through 9 is where we start today. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, and to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should not go, or that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. And Hatach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Now, you remember the background of this. Haman has been made what we would call the prime minister, second in command to Ahasuerus the king. And immediately he seems to be thinking of ways that he can attack the Jews. Good luck, New York, with what happened today in the election, or yesterday, for the Jews. But he gets a decree signed by the king, authorized by the king to, on one particular day, murder all the Jews in the kingdom. He makes false charges against them. Oh, they're enemies of the state. They don't pay their taxes, that kind of a thing. And so we need to get rid of them. And that's where we're picking up today, because Mordecai, remember, had gone to the gate of the king. After he learned this, he went out into the city. He put on sackcloth and ashes, which was a sign of mourning, and then he went to the king's gate. But he couldn't go inside the king's gate, even though apparently we notice in the context that he apparently was at that gate many, many times. On a regular basis, in fact, with his stepdaughter, because remember he adopted her, was the queen, and he was always checking to see how she was doing. And that's where we came to in verse 4. So Esther's maids and her chamberlain, they came to him, or to her, and told her about Mordecai. He's outside the gate, and he's in rags and sackcloth and ashes. What this seems to indicate is that Esther's maids knew that there was some kind of a connection between her and Mordecai. We don't know if they knew, the maids knew, that she was a Jew. It seems unlikely to me. But there's one person that does seem to know the connection as with her and Mordecai, and that they are Jews. And this man we're going to look at in just a few moments. But there does not seem to be an indication there. If any of her maids knew, what's the old saying? When one knows a secret, it's a secret. When two knows a secret, it's not a secret anymore. And you would think that they might have spilled the beans on this relationship. So I don't think that they knew at this moment in time that she was a Jew, but they're about to learn. And they report the fact that his mourning and his sackcloth, and he's wailing, he's yelling. Remember the terminology that we noticed in the first 4 verses? And she tried to help Mordecai, but Mordecai refused the help. She sent this special person to him, or her maids rather, and he refused the help. Now, what is Mordecai doing? He's sending her a strong message. He could have told the representatives that she sent to him what the problem was, but he didn't. And that indicates that he's sending her a message. You know, sometimes messages are sent very subtly between people. You know, sometimes Jenny and I can, you know, something will happen around us and we can look at each other and we know exactly what the other one's thinking. We don't have to communicate it with words. We've communicated it with a look. And so that is something that sometimes takes place. It's quite possible that in her sequestered situation as queen, that she would have been shielded from information that, oh, some bad thing is happening, even if her maids knew that she was a Jew. Because again, remember we noticed how the king, you were not allowed to go into the king in sackcloth and ashes. Why? You couldn't go before the king in mourning. You had to present a happy face to him all the time. So it's quite possible that in her sequestered situation, she didn't know about Haman's decree. Unpleasant things would have been kept from her. And so we should also remember that her attendants, again, did not yet appear to know that she was a Jew. So what did Esther do when Mordecai initially refused her help? Then she called a man named Hatak. Now, I know that you all know this. I'm sure that you do. In the Bible, the letters CH are a K. Hatak. He is a special representative of the king who is charged to take care of Esther in some manner. We don't know exactly all of his responsibilities because the Bible doesn't tell us. So who was this Hatak? He's one of the king's chamberlains. At the very least, his responsibility is to provide anything that Esther wants. He probably was commanded to provide this, and right now, she needs to know something. It's interesting to me that she calls for him, not her maids, now, after Mordecai has initially refused her help. Now she calls for this man. Is it possible that this man knows her relationship as not just the daughter of Mordecai, but as a Jew? And so she trusts him more to deliver a message and to have this revelation that she is a Jew. But right now she needs to know what's wrong with Mordecai. And she gives a royal command. You know, people don't think of the queen so many times as giving royal commands, but queens did. And if we look in present day, we'd say, well, that was an oddity. You know, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, she gave commands. She was royal. It wasn't odd at all for a queen to give a command. And she wants to know, wants Hatak to find out, why is Mordecai sitting in sackcloth and ashes? Hey, Tim.
How you doing?
So what did Mordecai tell Hatak? And note the details that Mordecai gives here. He said the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasury. He told him about this. How would he know that? How would Mordecai know the exact amount that had been promised to the king by Haman? He must have had either a high-ranking position himself and thus had heard the information from someone else that was high-ranking in the court, or he had a mole, a spy, in other words, in the king's house. Again, this would not have been uncommon for their time. It's not uncommon to today. Someone who's in a high position of authority in our government, it's not unusual for somebody to act as a mole, a spy, listening and then going to the newspaper and reporting it, as, well, a high-ranking official says. Obviously, he wasn't flying by his cuffs, the seat of his pants here. Mordecai wasn't like that. He had done his research. He had a copy of the decree, we know from earlier text, And so he'd done his homework. He wasn't one of these that, I heard something and now I'm going to fly off the seat of my pants and I'm going to raise a ruckus, and whether it's true or not, he knew it was true. So what message did Mordecai give Hatak for Esther? Charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, to plead with him. And notice that word, charge. Charge her. What's Mordecai doing here? He is giving a command to the queen. You think about that. I'm just a lowly congressman, and I'm going to tell the president, you have to do this. You don't have any choice. I told you so. That'd be the idea here. Mordecai is giving her a command. In boldness, he commands her to go to the king. He commanded her to plead with the king, make supplication, plead with him, make your request before him to the people, for the people. Remember previously, he had commanded her to conceal her identity, her nationality, when she was taken to possibly be the new queen. But after she became the queen, here he is still giving her commands. The word supplication is an interesting word because it implies a plea for grace, for favor, for pity. It involves all of those concepts in this word. So he's saying, plead with him to show pity on you and your people. Mordecai was telling her to put her life on the line for her people and for herself. You think about that. In John 15 and verse 13, what did Jesus say? Greater love hath no man than this, that what? A man lay down his life for his friends. Would you lay down your life for me? You know, it's easy for us to sit here tonight and say, oh yeah, I'd do it. Why? Because we're not in any danger of that happening right now. It'd be easy for us. But what happens when the rubber hits the road? What happens if that really came to pass, where somebody told you, I'm going to kill him or you? It's your choice. Would you give your life for me? You know, it's real easy for us to say that. Note two tests that Esther is about to go through. With the command that Mordecai has given her, knowing the law, look at the two tests that she's about to go through. Did she really love Mordecai and her people enough to sacrifice her life for them? Did she love God's people and God's law enough to give up all of her physical possessions for them? You know, it may have been the case that Ahasuerus loved her so much that he would have spared her life even though she was a Jew in some way, but removed her from being queen because of the stigma that it would then place upon him in the kingdom with the Jews removed. Was she willing to do that? Was she willing to give up all of her possessions for her God's law and her people? Question: do we as God's people, do we love God enough to give up everything in life to please Him? Easy to say, yeah, I'd give up my whole bank account. I'd give up my house. I'd let them take my car too. But then there's one thing that's still not missing there. Remember the book of Job? Satan approached God and said, Well, it's no wonder Job serves you. I'm paraphrasing. It's no wonder Job serves you. Why, look at what you've done for him. You've made him the richest man in all the East, maybe the richest man that's ever lived. That includes Solomon. You've made him the richest man. Oh, you've blessed him with all of these children. You've given him flocks and herds. You've made him influential among all the people around him. But you touch him, and he'll curse you to your face. Well, what'd God do? He took up the challenge, didn't he? He said, okay, you can do anything to him, but you can't take his life. Well, what did Satan do? Why, he killed all of Job's children. He killed all of his herdsmen and people except one in each group. Now, why did he let one servant in each of the groups that he talked about escape? Oh, so they could tell Job. So Job would know exactly what happened to his children, to his flocks, to his herdsmen. The flocks are all taken away. And so Satan went back to God, didn't he? Have you ever thought about this? Satan had access to God. He was called to report to God along with the angels of God. You ever thought about that? And Satan basically said, yeah, he'll still serve you. Why? Because you won't let me touch his life. Let me touch his life, his person. And God said again, okay, but you can't kill him. And what did Satan do? You ever thought about this? I mean, you think, well, he put boils all over Job, and what kind of punishment is that? What kind of hurt is that? You ever had a boil? Just one? He made Job have boils from the top of his head all the way to the bottom of his feet. If you've ever had a boil, you know one boil is so excruciatingly painful. Job couldn't lay down. He couldn't put something on his head to protect it from the sun. He couldn't walk anywhere. The only relief he got was to go to the dump and take broken pieces of pottery and scrape on it. Oh, you remember having poison ivy, those of us who could get poison ivy? Didn't it feel so good to just scratch it and break those little bubbles of poison ivy open? And then we paid for it even more than we did before, didn't we? Take our life. That's another matter, isn't it? Oh, give up everything I own to please God. Yeah, I'd do it. Well, what about your life? What about if he caused you excruciating pain all the time? You know, I think a lot about Susan. She goes through pain that I wonder how she does it sometimes. I pray for her all the time, Ron. Every day, by name. I pray for all of you by name, too. Every single day. I got a long prayer list. Takes me a while to get through it. And I pray for her that she'll have the ability to withstand that pain and not lose her faith. It'd be easy to do. A lot easier than we think when we're whole, when we don't have any pain. In Matthew 6 and verse 33, God gave us the answer how to withstand the troubles of this world, the things we go through. He said, seek ye first. That word first, primary, above all else, the kingdom of God and His righteousness. And all these things shall be added unto you. Now let's take that in context for a moment. What's the context of that passage? Oh, you remember. Before that, he talked about the birds of the air, how they didn't have barns, but God took care of them. In another passage, didn't he tell us that we are of more value than the birds as human beings? Oh, he talked about the clothes and how the lilies of the field were clothed far more spectacular than Solomon was. In other words, the necessities of life. That's what the context was talking about. The birds of the air, the flowers of the field. He continued in that passage in verse 34 to say, take therefore no thought for the morrow. What is he talking about? Why are you worrying about tomorrow? Why are you worry about right now? Right now is when you ought to be concerned about. Tomorrow's going to take care of itself. And in that context, stop worrying about what you're going to eat, about what you're going to put on your body, whether you'll have shelter, how you're going to survive. Sufficient unto the day, right now, this moment, is the evil thereof. Whatever it is that's troubling us, just deal with it right now. You have time tomorrow if you have tomorrow to take care of the troubles that may come then. Look at James 4, 13 through 14. Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow you will go into such a city. And what are you going to do in that city? I'm going to continue there a year. I'm going to stay there a whole year. This is a person who is dogmatic about, I'm going to go into this city. I'm going to stay there. I'm going to be there for a whole year. How do I know what tomorrow's going to bring? What are you going to do there? I'm going to buy and sell, and I'm going to get gain. I'm going to get rich. Oh, what we ought to think is, what's my life? Am I even going to have the next second? We don't know. Your life is like a vapor. It's like the fog in the morning that lays over the land, and then the sun comes out. What happens? The fog pretty quickly disappears, doesn't it? Our life is short. We've got enough to be concerned about just right now. I've got enough to be concerned about right now, holding on to my faith, being faithful to God, being concerned about right now. Take care of tomorrow. Tomorrow, I should have said take care of today. I should have said take care of this moment. Tomorrow's enough to take care of itself. I got to make sure I change that. Look at verse 10 through 12. Again, Esther spake unto Hathach, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come into the king, into the inner court, who is not called there, is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king should hold out the gold and scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Interesting there. Somebody went with Hathach to deliver these words to Mordecai. Esther basically is telling Mordecai, you know it's illegal to go into the king's presence, into his inner sanctum, so to speak. That is where his courtroom is, his throne is. It's illegal for someone to go in there without an invitation. And you know that the penalty, if I would go in there without an invitation and he doesn't want me in there, is death. Many believe that there were certain men, special men, that were set just inside the doors of this inner sanctum, that it was their job that if someone came into that room unannounced and were not given the golden scepter, so to speak, it wasn't extended to them, to immediately kill them. Now, that fits really the rulers of that time. If so, if that is true, if it is the case that those men were there just waiting for someone to not come in invited or to come in uninvited, did they take it upon themselves to execute? I doubt it. Could anything save a person who did come into the king's room unannounced, uninvited? Could anything save them? Sure. The text says, except such to whom the king should hold out the golden scepter. If they weren't invited, they're to be killed. But there's an exception to this rule. If the king held out his golden scepter, his symbol of authority, it's going to be seen later that there's more to that than just holding out the scepter. But that's for a later time in our study. For now, all we've got to think about is if the scepter was held out, a person could be pardoned from their breaking the law. So they told Mordecai, Hatak and whoever it was that was with him, told him Esther's words. Now, let's think about what was behind Esther's words for just a moment. Was she just making excuses because she didn't want to do it? Because she knew what the law said? Was it fear? Oh, the law says if I go in there uninvited and he doesn't extend that golden scepter to me, I'm going to be killed. Maybe she thought, what can I do? I'm just one person. You ever feel that way as a Christian? When you see all the turmoil around you in the world and in the community in which you live, and all of your neighbors are not members of the Lord's church, they're not part of God's family, and they're doing all kinds of things, what can I possibly do? You know, sometimes I think about the preachers in our brotherhood that have so much more ability than I do. They're word masters. That's not me. They have so much ability. I think of one in particular that I really love to listen to him preach. And in fact, I try to do it every Sunday because their lessons are streamed and then they're archived. And that's Scott Kane in Memphis, Tennessee. And I listen to Scott and I think, how in the world did he put that together? Why didn't I see that? I'm just one. I don't have the audience that he does. Literally thousands and thousands of people every single Sunday, either online, or the congregation holds, I think, about 450 people in the building. There aren't usually that many there on Sundays. How can I do? Look at what he's doing. But you know what? I can do something, can't I? I can be here in this room teaching people, and I am teaching some people, a few, online. I can still write. I'm not as good a writer as some of these other folks are, but I can still write and get a message across, can't I? Every one of us can do something. That's my point. Every one of us may look at ourselves sometimes, maybe like Esther was doing, and say, what can I do? I'm just one. But we might be surprised. I remember years ago riding in a car with a man who was not a Christian. He was driving, and he asked me, he said, where's your church? I don't have a church. That was my answer. I don't have a church. And he was real puzzled about that, and he thought, he's thinking denominational. Not your church? You don't have a church? I said, the church isn't mine. The church is our Lord's. It belongs to Christ. It belongs to God. Little did I know at the time that little phrase, I don't have a church, and the very short explanation of it was going to lead to this Catholic giving up Catholicism, and he had been studying to be a priest. He had thought about being a priest in the Catholic Church, to give it up and instead study and become a New Testament Christian, because when he studied, he found out there's nothing in the Bible that says the Pope owns the church, and there's nothing in the Bible about any man owning the church, but there is a lot in the Bible telling us that Christ, it's His church, it's God's church. And little did I know what that would lead to. Not only did he become a Christian, but he studied, and then he started preaching down in Ocala, Florida. And he became an elder in that congregation. And to this day, he's still studying. That was way over 20 years ago. Maybe around 30, 40. Jenny says 40. 40 years ago. How time slips by. Absolutely amazing. You and I are important. That's one part of the point I'm trying to make. We may not be able to do what somebody else can do. I don't have the photographic memory that my friend Keith Mosier has. Therefore, I cannot accomplish some of the things that he does. He can put it together rapidly because he's got it up here. But I can do something. I'm important to God. You are important to God. Because there is something we can do for His kingdom, to magnify His kingdom, to magnify God in the eyes of others. It may simply be our acting friendly towards someone because we're Christians, or doing some nice thing for them, or telling them about Jesus. We're important, every one of us, and don't ever forget it. Don't magnify yourself or myself above everybody else. Don't do that. But realize you are important. I'm important. We can all do something for God's kingdom, and that's what makes us important. And we are important to God. Why? Because we are His children. We belong to Him. And every time we win a battle against Satan, I can say with full confidence, He's proud of us. He's proud of us. Don't ever forget that. You're important. And when we fight the battles, when we refuse to give up our faith, He's proud of us. Esther tells us in this context that she hadn't been invited to come before the king for over a month. Apparently, that was kind of unusual. And maybe she's thinking, I've displeased him in some way, and if I go before him now, what's going to come of this? Maybe there's a pressing matter right now that I don't know about in the kingdom, because again, remember, she would have been shielded from a lot of stuff, just like us men try to shield our wives from a lot of stuff. Isn't that right, Ron? We do. We try to shield you from things that will hurt you. Maybe he doesn't want to be bothered right now. If I go in, it's evident that she felt unease about approaching the king at this time. And she's expressing that to Mordecai. You know, even the greatest and bravest hesitate at times, and they'll back away from their responsibilities because of that. It's not wrong to be afraid. In fact, fear can help us a lot of times, can it? Why don't you go and take your hand and put it on a red hot eye of the stove? Why don't you do it? It's fear, isn't it? You don't want to get burned, and you know that if you get your hand too close, you're going to get burned. If you stick it on there, you're definitely going to get burned, and it's going to be bad burn. You don't want that pain. Fear can be a good thing, but if we let fear keep us from doing what God tells us to do, that's a bad thing. That'll cause us to lose our soul. Do we do that sometimes as Christians? Yeah. I've debated with myself about one congregation for years. I've debated about that one congregation, none of the others, but one. Whether when they fired me just because they didn't want me around, just because one of the elders didn't want me around and had been trying to get rid of me for years, I've debated on whether I should have stayed and fought. But you know, there's 7 things that God hates. Isn't there? And if you go to that list in the Old Testament, you'll find that one of them is causing division. I could have split that congregation in half easy. Because unbeknownst to me, later, a lot of the members of the congregation started signing a petition to give to the elders to get me back. I didn't know it at the time, but I knew I could have split the congregation. But I also know that God hates division. And that's a hard thing to try and realize when sometimes division needs to take place. Sometimes it needs to take place. Remember Moses? When God called him, you think about Moses and all that he accomplished. You think about his bravery in being a shepherd as he had to face the wild animals that would try to come, like David, who would try and come and kill the sheep. Remember David, it says of him that with his bare hands, he killed the bear and the lion. Grabbed him by the beard, language is. Think of the bravery it would take for Moses to do that. Or raiding bands of people coming trying to take some of the flock to get a little food, steal it from him. And yet when you look at Exodus chapter 4, when God wanted him to go down to Egypt and be the one who would lead his people out of bondage, not deliver them, but lead his people. God's going to do the delivering. What did he start doing? Making excuses. Oh, I can't do this. Who am I? Maybe the same kind of excuse Esther made. I don't have power and authority, and I can't tell the king what to do. But then when he finally was convinced and finally began doing what God told him to do, didn't Moses do exactly that same thing? Went right into Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." Gave him a command. Didn't do it once. Did it time after time, even though Pharaoh refused to let him go, didn't he? We think of Moses being an exceptionally brave man, but there was a time when he gave in to doubts, and maybe sometimes we do too. But when we do, if it comes to the point where we realize in giving in refusing to do what we should do at the moment, we do know that God's going to give us forgiveness if we ask. And He'll still accept us. He'll wipe away a blot if it is a blot. What a God we have. We serve an almighty God, so wonderful and compassionate, willing to forgive. Such a comfort. Thank you for your attendance.